Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Girl Get Up podcast. I am your host, Miss C. Jones, and I have a guest, Mr. William Makell. Please share with the audience who you are and what you do. The floor is yours.
Hey, thanks a lot, Chauncia. First, I want to say I really appreciate you opening up this platform to me. And my background, I was a career Coast Guard officer and helicopter pilot, and spent 29 years in the U.S. Coast Guard. Half of that was spent flying aircraft. And the last 10 years of my career got into HR, and now in retirement, I am a leadership coach, AI consultant, and I coach and train internationally.
Okay, so I like to take all of my guests to back to the beginning. I always like to have my guests share how they got into their particular role or their long-standing career. You said you was in the military. So what did that look like for you? Is that something that you saw your father or the generations before you do, or was there an experience that led to you for you to make that decision?
I would say that for most of my childhood, I was against going into the military. And when I got into high school, and I grew up in Seat Pleasant, Maryland, and then moved to Clinton, Maryland, at about 8 years old.
Okay.
And when I was in high school in the 11th grade, there was a program called Boy State.
Okay.
And I have come to find out that Boy State, and there's also a Girl State, they have it in all 50 states. And it was conducted at Fort Meade. And ours was set up to where the military was in control of everything. They set up a dictatorship, and it was our job to overthrow the dictatorship. But during that time, I believe there was someone in a Marine Corps uniform or maybe an Army uniform, I'm not sure. But this person looked so sharp in uniform, and they had this saber or sword. They
Okay.
had the dress uniform on, and I'm looking at that, and I'm like, wow, that really looks sharp. And also the experience of them having us march around and so forth, and we're living in the barracks. It gave me a different perspective to
Mm-hmm.
where I could actually start to see myself doing something like that, or at least be open to it. And shortly after going through that program, I received a postcard from the Coast Guard in the mail, and it said, "Can you meet the challenge?" And I was always someone that would go after a challenge, and I liked what it had to say about the Coast Guard's mission and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So I applied to get more information. And during this time, my father, who had also spent 3 years in the Coast Guard,
Okay.
from 1949 to 51, he didn't talk about his time in the Coast Guard much because of the time period that he served. Lots of discrimination, as you would suspect, for that time period. So he wasn't necessarily proud of his career. But when I became interested, he started talking about different things. He was stationed on a buoy tender in Alaska and stationed in California, and he and my mother were both native Washingtonians. But he started to show pride and so forth, and was 100% supportive of me going into the Coast Guard.
Did that deepen you all's relationship around that time?
I don't think it necessarily deepened it.
Mm-hmm.
We already had a great relationship. And
Mm-hmm.
it is funny. Both my parents have passed now, but I used to, well, I was going to say I used to joke, but it wasn't really a joke. I said, if anything ever happens to you two, in terms if they ever split up or something like that, I was going to live with my dad. Because, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he was like, almost like a best friend
Really?
growing up, even though he was a disciplinarian. we had a great relationship. If I wanted to play catch, we'd go out in the backyard and play catch. It taught me, riding bikes, all those kinds of things that fathers and sons do when there's a great relationship. And I
Mm.
have two brothers as well, but he passed away when I was in my early 30s,
I'm sorry.
and I was just so grateful that he left me with good memories.
Yeah. So you made that decision to go to the Coast Guard. Was that immediately after high school, or what did that look
Yes.
like?
So when I was in high school, like many people, we struggle with SAT scores and so forth. And my goal was to go to the Coast Guard Academy.
Mhm.
I wasn't planning on enlisting in the Coast Guard because I always wanted to go to college. And I didn't have the SAT scores upon graduating, but the Coast Guard had a program where they shared a preparatory school with the Naval Academy. The Naval Academy prep school was in Rhode Island, Connecticut. So the Coast Guard set me up to go there. So we had Coast Guard, Marine Corps, and Navy students that would go to the prep school. And if you finished the curriculum at the prep school for 1 year, then you had an automatic spot the following year at the
Mhm.
Coast Guard Academy or the Naval Academy. So I went through almost the entire year because we still had the prerequisite that you had to get, the minimum score to get into the Coast Guard Academy. And I was getting to the end of the year, maybe 2 months prior to graduation, and I was still having some challenges there. And the Naval Academy had approached me and said, "Hey, look, we don't care what those scores say. You've shown that you can get through this curriculum. We would love to have you at the Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland."
Mhm. Mhm.
And I said, "I appreciate the offer, but my heart is really set on the Coast Guard and the Coast Guard's mission." And they told me if you didn't make a decision now, that you would miss the opportunity to go to the Naval Academy, and then you still may not get the score you need to go into the Coast Guard Academy. So you would be risking everything.
Mm.
And I said, "I know what I want to do, and I'm going to take that risk." Long story short, I ended up getting the score that I needed to
Oh,
gain
excellent.
advancement into the Coast Guard Academy and set myself up not to have any regrets, working in an organization. And there's nothing bad about the Navy. It's just that I really wanted to do the Coast Guard's mission and believed in it in terms of, its search and rescue,
Mhm.
law enforcement type missions, as opposed to just preparing for war and defense.
Yeah. That preparation time, turning down that offer and that preparation time to take that test, what did you have to sacrifice? Did you have to, like say no to friends? Like, what did you have to sacrifice to prepare for that?
So being in the prep school was already a sacrifice
Mhm.
because we would go to school all day, but it was still a military organization. You're away from home. Everybody has the same goal of getting into a service academy. So we did not have a lot of free time, even though we had time on the weekends. But it's a very rigorous curriculum. And I think the sacrifice was already there. It's just a matter of putting in whatever amount of time that's right for you to actually accomplish what it is you set out to accomplish. And that's something that I think we miss sometimes. Our
Mhm.
dreams and goals require some type of payment, and that's in your time, your effort. Just setting the goal doesn't mean that you're going to achieve it. And that's one of the three things that I believe sets us up for failure sometimes
Mhm.
is not having a goal execution strategy.
Okay.
We're taught to set goals,
Mhm.
smart goals, but if you don't have smart execution, goals don't get you anywhere. Goals are just an intent. I intend to do this, but it doesn't put you in a position to make sure that it happens. And that's what systems and habits do.
Excellent. I love that. That's an absolute fact. Okay, so you spent quite a few years in the military, and during that time, I'm sure you've learned a lot because your business, WJM Success Solutions, is all about leadership coaching. So, talk about your experience in the military, which you have been able to accomplish because we've been able to talk behind the scenes. So, I know you've done some great things. Share about that and how that sets you up to begin your leadership journey in your business.
So I served for 29 years on active duty. And then if you count my time at the Coast Guard Academy, 4 years there, that was 33 years in uniform. And what I learned in the military, especially going through flight school, going through the academy, and I'll just start with the academy. I started out as an electrical engineer,
Okay.
and or at least in the electrical engineering program, but my math background wasn't where it needed to be for me to matriculate through that process on time. So I ended up switching to math and computer science. So I ended up graduating with a math and computer science degree. But I still had challenges where I ended up having to overload for two
Mm,
semesters. And it was another one of those decision moments where at the academy, everything is very class centric. So I really wanted to stay with my class. I didn't want to graduate a year later. And so I took 21 credits one semester, 22 the next. And I ended up getting what I needed to do and graduated on time. So I think sometimes we underestimate
mm,
ourselves when we really have a goal that we believe in and we feel it. There's a difference between hoping something happens and feeling and knowing
mm,
something will happen. And when I was in those situations, I actually was feeling that I could do it and everything would be okay. I learned through my experiences that you can overcome. You're strong, you're resilient, even though the odds may be stacked against you, even though others may not believe that you can achieve certain things. The most important person that has to believe is myself. It doesn't matter what other people think. Yes, it can influence your thoughts and you have to be careful who you have around you.
mhm.
But no matter what anybody says, if you don't believe it, you're going to be okay as long as the belief that you have is positive.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the key things that I learned coming into this world. I was born 3 months premature. My mother said I fit
Yeah.
in the palm of her hand. My skin was translucent, so I had to be in an incubator for a while. And even when I came home, I was 18 months old when I took my first steps. Yeah. So, started out life with adversity,
Yeah.
but, keep standing up.
Yeah.
And then even in flight school, the biggest struggle with flight school is me not seeing, initially, I was not able to see me as a pilot because there were very few African American pilots at, Naval Air Station Pensacola. I remember there was a gentleman's name was J.C. Jacobs, and
Mhm.
he was Coast Guard also. And I remember telling him one day, I'm just struggling trying to become a pilot. And he looked at me and he said, anybody that straps a parachute on every day, gets in the aircraft, starts it up, rolls down the runway, takes off, lands, just because there's an instructor in the back doesn't mean you're not already a pilot. You're doing everything a pilot does. You just have an instructor in the back, but you're doing everything. And something clicked for me. It was my self image that I was
Mm-hmm.
struggling with. You know, your thought process, the mindset, and these conversations that we have with ourselves can determine whether you have success or failure. And these are just some of the stories that went into me building my company, WJM Success Solutions, because I had all these stories of adversity. I always felt like my back was up against the wall. I always felt like I was struggling. Sometimes it was just because of me, and then
Mm.
sometimes it's just because of the times that I came through. So I know that we have both real and perceived limitations. But I've also, through my experiences, found out that I'm strong enough to weather both. You don't have to give up. You just have to decide to keep going. But it can be done. So that's a little bit of the background behind why I do what I do. And one of the frameworks that I use, I call them my seven pillars of success: mindset, skill set, vision, faith, action, integrity, and perseverance. Those are seven things that I think we have to have in place to accomplish everything we set out to do. And again, that's mindset, skill set, vision, faith, action, integrity, and perseverance. Those things. It's so key. And I think the most important of those is the mindset and faith. And when I say faith, I'm talking about belief. Belief that you can. Belief that you can overcome. Belief that you're good enough.
Once you retired, what opportunities came up for you to be able to start your business?
My business, WJM Success Solutions, I actually started it in 2011. And
Okay.
as I said earlier, I retired in 2018. So I had my business for 7 years before I retired, but it was more a hobby. I enjoyed speaking at that point in time. In 2004, I was afraid of public speaking. I speak for a living now. It was
Mm.
something that I didn't want to do. And because of my position in the Coast Guard, being one of a few African American officers, and then an even smaller population of African American pilots. When I got to my first air station, it was just me. Going back to the business piece, in 2004, I got up the courage to ask my co-pastor if I could give a testimony in the
Oh
church,
wow. Okay.
and I wanted to talk about how blessed both myself and my wife had been because the Coast Guard paid for our master's degrees. For months, I was not able to sleep right because I had the feeling that I needed to get up and testify, but yet I was afraid to. And God saw fit to make me so uncomfortable for a couple of months that I finally had to get the courage to ask the co-pastor if I could give testimony in the church. And then I ended up doing that. And in the process of doing that, when I was giving the testimony and speaking to several hundred people in the church in 2004, it was such a good experience. And I could see the people's faces and see them really enthralled into what I was saying. And this feeling of this is what I'm supposed to do. I left Washington, D.C. because I was at Coast Guard headquarters. And when
Okay.
I left to go to Atlantic City, the first thing I started looking for was Toastmasters. I
Mm.
got
Yes.
into I got into a Toastmasters club that was right there on the base, right there at the airport where I was serving. And on day one, volunteered to do an impromptu speaking, earned a little award that first time, and confidence just started building, and I started writing, the little speeches, the 5-minute speeches that you need to do in Toastmasters, and did that for several years. And then when it was time to find my next job in the Coast Guard, I uh, decided to take or to apply for the job of diversity policy advisor for the Commandant of the Coast Guard. And a friend of mine had the job previous to me, and I'd asked him about it. I said, "Will this allow me to have speaking opportunities?" And he said, "Oh, yes, you'll have plenty of speaking opportunities. You'll go to different diversity conferences and be a speaker." So I said, "Okay, that's the job I want." So I ended up getting that job. I ended up, flying to different places with the uh, Commandant of the Coast Guard and spoke at conferences. And again, building up that confidence to
Mhm.
where I expected everything to go well. So I learned everything about DEI that I needed to get started. And I started speaking on DEI, which was a part of my job. And that was the precursor. And then I started my business. And then when I retired, I was looking for a chief diversity officer job is what I was looking for. That didn't work out. And then I said, why don't you quit searching for the perfect job and create the perfect job? And that's when I relooked at my business, WJM Success Solutions. And at that point, I got into Georgetown's leadership coaching program, which led me through the contacts that I uh, got in that program, met someone that had an in to get on a coaching contract with the U.S. Army. And then I was able to get on that because of my military background. And I've been teaching, not teaching, but coaching Army officers for the past 6 years, coaching Army officers who were in the pipeline to become battalion commanders, brigade commanders, where they'd have 600 to 800 people working for them. I've coached special forces in the Army. So that was my first um, introduction to really doing business for myself. And then that went on to me working with NASA, CIA, global pharmaceuticals, international coaching, uh, members at our embassies. So that's been what I have enjoyed doing, helping people have the light bulb come on. And as I tell people, my job is to make the invisible visible, the subconscious and the subconscious conscious, so that when we get to a decision point, we have enough awareness that we can make different decisions.
It's funny you use that word conscious and subconscious.
Hmm.
Now, I had a chance to look at your website, and you do some quite a bit of research into leadership coaching and mindset. Through your research, what have you learned rather about programming and reprogramming the mindset?
Yes, what I have found is that our minds can't tell the difference between what's real and perceived.
Mm,
I've dabbled some in hypnosis. I've been hypnotized before. I thought it wasn't real at first. When I was at the Coast Guard Academy, there was a hypnotist that came and did a show for the
okay.
cadets. And I was up on the stage, one of the volunteers, and I watched him have my classmates doing all kinds of things that I just wouldn't. I know that that's not who they are. And I was like, okay, there's something to it. And then he put me to sleep. And I was wide awake when I went, up on the stage. So,
Are you serious?
yeah, yeah. So, made me a believer. And I had always, even though I was in a technical, major, I always had a love of psychology. Now I have been able to merge both of those worlds together. But going back to the mindset piece, we don't really the brain can't tell the difference between what's real and unreal or what's real and perceived. And there are processes that happen inside the body, even if it's just perceived.
Okay.
So when you can get yourself to fully believe in something and feel like it's going to happen, it can happen. When you just go over mental rehearsing in your mind and put yourself there, it's just as much as the real practice. And you've probably heard of athletes doing visualizations and so forth. It's the same kind of thing. And a lot of people get into affirmations, and I think affirmations are good. I've used them myself. But the thing that's missing is the belief part, the feeling that it's going to happen for you. So it's not just saying it, it's saying it and feeling it and helping people get to the point to where they can feel it themselves.
Hmm.
That opens the door for them to step up to the next level on their success ladder.
Yeah. I know for me, there are things that I want to do. Um, and it's like that perceived fear, like imagining the worst of what could happen, even, but
Mhm.
only because it validates your fear or your perception of what you think,
Hmm.
versus just going out there doing it and, building up the confidence from doing. So,
Yes. So
it's
I'm gonna give
uh-huh.
you a quick story. So there's a process, a framework that I use called STEAM,
Okay.
which stands for situation, thought, emotion, action, and manifestation. And back when I was in flight school, so this was the mid, no, finished, yeah, between 92 and 94. So this is probably the late 92, 93 time frame. I was going out on my first solo aerobatic flight. And when I say
Okay.
aerobatic flight, that's where you go out and you do loops in the aircraft, aileron rolls, you're flying upside down, all those kinds of things. And this was a solo flight. So this is where you don't have the instructor in the back and you go out and you do it, yourself. And 2 weeks prior to my solo flight for aerobatics, one of my classmates, who was also Coast Guard, I think it was Coast Guard, he had an experience where he went out on his solo flight and he stalled the aircraft at the top of his loop. So he's inverted, he's upside down, and the aircraft stalls. So he starts somersaulting out of the air towards the ground. He survived, he got the aircraft under control. Now it's time for me to go out. And what do you think I had in my mind?
The previous experience of your
Yes.
teammate.
And I will also say this on the flights that I had with my instructor when I was practicing all these maneuvers, never had a problem with those maneuvers. But when it came time to do it on my own, when I went into the loop, I started feeling the warning system for impending stall. So the pedals start shaking.
Hmm.
So I ended up aborting that maneuver and then told my instructor what had happened and so forth. And then we took another flight. We went over those maneuvers and everything was fine. And what I learned in that process is that my mind is what led me to have to abort that maneuver. Because now going back to the framework STEAM, the situation is that I had to do a loop. So that's fact. The situation is fact. It is whatever this situation is. My thought was that the aircraft is going to stall and then I would be somersaulting out of the sky backwards towards the ground and I might not recover it. That was the thought. The feeling was fear. The action was hesitancy. I hesitated pulling back on the stick. I didn't pull back on it with confidence the way I always had. So the outcome was that I ended up having to abort the loop, or it was a failed attempt at doing the loop maneuver. And then when I went back out the second time, I said, you know what? I'm going into it with a different thought. So going into it, I felt confidence. That was the feeling because I've done this before. The
Mm-hmm.
action now was I pulled back smartly on the stick like I'm supposed to, carried the proper momentum going into the loop, and the outcome was success. The difference was mindset, and that was the birth of my STEAM framework. It came to me during my coaching program,
Mm-hmm.
but the situation that birthed that framework was that maneuver and understanding and having a concrete example of how the mindset tweak just changed everything, changed the outcome.
Yep, just a tweak of the mindset. I love that you said that. So, why do you think that leadership is important, especially right now?
Specialize with self leadership, and I call it inner core leadership,
Hmm.
which is, I believe, mind, body, emotion, and spirit are the core areas. As a leader, all we do all day long is communicate. We communicate with ourselves, we communicate with others. We have organizations full of leaders. The foundation is your inner core leadership. It's all about you. You are at the base of the organization. Then we have also ideas. We've got ideas that we push out into the organization. It comes out of ourselves and out into the organization. We also have relationships that we're responsible for. As leaders, we get nothing done unless we have good relationships. So we've got ideas, what we communicate and push out, and we've got relationships that if you have good relationships, then you have people that can help you as the leader implement your vision. Then we have culture, environment. As leaders, we set the tone of the culture and the environment. If the culture environment is toxic or negative, it impacts everything. Those three areas, ideas, relationships, environment, or culture, also dictate our organizational outcomes and goals that we're looking to achieve.
Hmm.
So, what I teach people is that we have to take full command and 100% responsibility of our thoughts, feelings, and actions. We cannot perform any greater than we think and feel at any given moment in time. And just like that loop, when I had to abort that maneuver, my thoughts and feelings weren't in the right place.
Hmm.
So I have to be 100% responsible. And that comes through self awareness. See, most of the time for us, our thoughts and feelings are subconscious. We're operating on autopilot, a program that runs within us, a software program that's been running since childhood that gets developed. And we don't even know it's running these scripts.
Yes, and I'm not. I like how you relate everything back to technology and how the
Yes.
mind works. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So, so it's everything. And that's why I say my job is to help people make the unconscious conscious and the invisible visible so that we can make a different decision when we come to the crossroads. Or if we
Hmm.
come to the off ramp, you're either going to keep moving forward toward your destination or you're going to take the easy button and just say, I'm exiting here. I'm done. I'm going to maintain status quo.
Yeah. But I think one thing that I'm sitting here listening to you, and from the genesis of your career until now, one thing that I've picked up on, and it's been a heavy theme, is you start with yourself. So when I asked you, about the reprogramming the mind, it's kind of like you creating a framework, like you said, based on your own experiences and taking what works and taking what and what works, and you helping others develop that in their own lives and in their own business. I want to take it a little take a little turn because you are, and you mentioned it, doing AI now. And I want to talk about what was that introduction into that, because that is a definitely, like you said, a new way of thinking.
Hmm.
But also, too, I find that we're in an interesting place now where AI is no longer just a fad. So, how are you helping businesses make space in their organizations to implement AI
So the
moving?
first thing I try to do is alleviate the fear.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it goes back to we can't perform any greater than we think and feel. So I have to help people change their perception around AI, be open to learning about it. And all of my trainings, whether it's DEI, whether it's AI, whether it's leadership, I break things down almost to the atom. If you think about chemistry and science, breaking it down all the way. With AI, once people start to see and play with it a little bit, and I say, let's just do some personal things with it first before you even start doing business stuff. Just let it do some personal things for you. Set a schedule for yourself. Let it remind you of something on a daily basis, starting with like a chat GPT or Claude, something like that. Just get used to it and find out that the world didn't fall apart because you shared something with AI that would help you.
But I want to talk about how did you get into it, because that was a big
Okay.
shift from
Yes.
leadership coaching
So,
into. Okay.
so DEI of the last couple years started shrinking, shriveling up
Mhm.
business
Yeah.
wise, especially with this administration. I had been dabbling in AI for 2 years because I was interested in it. And I was in a mastermind program where we did like an all day deep dive in it, like 12 hours. And
Oh
I was
wow.
just so intrigued about what we're able to do with that. And then this past August, ended up jumping into a consultant program to become a certified consultant, and then ended up earning a certification, and then started doing things with it with my own business. And then just recently I started working with my church to
Mhm.
help people in our church membership get smarter on AI, because we are in a time where we have to learn it. I
Mhm.
look at this, we were not able to take advantage of the gold rush in 1849. We were not able to, come here by way of the Mayflower, march west, put a stake in the ground and say, these are my 1,000 acres. And I don't know about you, but I missed out on Bitcoin. I missed out on NVIDIA. AI is like that. Between now in 2030, it's going to be some major shifts. And the
Mhm.
people that I think will end up on the losing side will be the people that are just consumers. Over the next 10 years, 70% of the wealth that's created is going to be created through digital products.
Mhm.
AI is the great equalizer. We are living in an age where we're only limited by our own creativity. And with AI, you no longer have to code by hand. You can just talk to the AI about what you're trying to do,
Yes.
and then it will start doing it for you. That's why I say it's a great equalizer. In terms of marketing and strategies for your small business, you can train your AI to provide services for you, like someone you'd have to pay $5,000 and $10,000 to do your program. So even though as small businesses, we're not resourced like some of these multi-million-dollar corporations, you can still show up in a way that you match the look, because you now can employ agents and you have programs that can do some of the same things that they're hiring or were hiring employees and staff to do. You would just have what they'd call an agentic staff. You hire AI agents or employ AI agents to do some of those same things. A marketing agent, a script writer, even a podcast, the research you can do with AI. And it's important for us to know, because you don't have to go back to school to get a marketing degree just so that you can market for your small business. AI is like hiring a virtual assistant that has a PhD in just about everything imaginable. But just like a VA, you've got to train it
Yes.
for everything that you needed to understand about your business so that the VA can do work for you. The VA has all the smarts and knowledge, but it doesn't know your business, so you have to train it. That's the key.
Yeah.
And that's where people like me, AI consultant, where we can come in and we can start helping business owners start to put the plans together, the strategies together, the knowledge files, so that they can employ their agents. And that's one aspect of it.
Yeah. Do you find that people are more open to AI now?
The way I teach it, they're more open to it because I take the time with people and I understand the psychology. And that's why I've been super successful with DEI work as well. Regardless of their race, ethnicity, background, gender, because of how I break it down. I don't just jump right in and get to the scary stuff, if you will. I break
Mhm.
it down so that everybody's starting on a common page. And from there, we do the work.
Yeah. Okay. I want to give the opportunity for the audience to know exactly what you do, how they can reach out to you.
So, services that I offer, yes, I offer leadership coaching. I also have a community that I just kicked off, which is AI for leaders and business. So I have a paid membership community, and then I also have a free community called Chosen for Greatness Leadership Network, a private community where I'm really at the crux is trying to help my folks. And real quick, I have two brands. I have Chosen for Greatness Leadership Network, which is underneath my WJM Success Solutions. Most of my
Okay.
clients for WJM Success Solutions have been people that don't look like me. And I wanted to do something for my community, so I set up a new brand and I operate both the same. And that's Chosen for Greatness Leadership Network. And I'm trying to help people overcome their real and perceived limitations so that they can have the life, career, and business that they truly deserve. So I'm teaching the same frameworks, the same strategies. It's just that on one, I focus on my community so that we have everything we need. And then I still have WJM Success Solutions, which is more, corporate facing, private clients, but we learn the same types of things. And with my AI for leaders in business, I have both brands doing this together. So I can be reached at W Makell, that's WMAKELL, at WJMSuccessSolutions.com. Also, my two communities are hosted on Go Collab, GOKOLLAB.com. And you can search those two communities, Chosen for Greatness Network, and the other community is AI for Leaders and Business.
Okay. So you use the perfect word because that's community. And that's going to segue into how we met. So, for the people who don't know, I still do my career coaching and still do speaking engagements with youth. And I participated in a career day with one of the local schools in my community. And I happened to meet Mr. Williams at the school that we were doing a career day at. So we had an opportunity to connect and to network. And he began to share with me why he was there. And I thought it was awesome that we are having businesses come in and talk about AI and leadership with today's youth. So I want to get into the community piece of your business because you recently had an event at your church and you're doing and collaborating with other churches and other businesses to bring AI and leadership concepts into community organizations. So I want to give you the opportunity to share that piece of your business.
So, also working with three other women that we're coming together, and there will probably be some more as well, because I realize that I have a vision for Black Wall Street 2030. And I alluded earlier about these massive changes that are going to come up in the next 5 years. And some of these changes, it'll be by 2028. If we do not get on this, I call it a freedom train. And at the church, I said the Spirit of Harriet is the name of the train. And it's coming to Union Temple Station. And we had the meeting. But I told people that this is a train you don't want to miss. And here in Washington, D.C., we have Union Station. If you're trying to catch a train to New York and it says it leaves at noon, if you get there at 12:05, that train is gone. And there may not be another AI freedom train coming behind this one. So I'm trying to let people know that they have to learn it. Even if you're afraid of it, at least learn what you think is the enemy. Learn it.
Yeah.
Because no matter what, you're going to be competing with businesses that are using it, and you cannot compete with someone that's using AI to help level up their business. You can do the work. One agent can do the work of maybe 10 employees, if not more, depending on what it is. You can't keep up with that.
Right.
So you have to help yourself be successful. Learn the skill. It's not hard to learn. And that's why I tell people we're only limited by our own creativity. And I'm not saying that just because it sounds good. Literally, when you learn AI, it opens up the creativity because you're not limited by your education. If you don't have a degree, so what? I was sitting on a panel a month and a half ago. The host said, "Oh, by the way, we're doing this for CEUs, and I need you to speak on machine learning, and we need these 20 points covered." Well, that wasn't my expertise. I was going to talk more about generative AI.
Okay.
But since I had already promised and I was 2 weeks into the promise, and then I got the extra information, the fine print, instead of backing out, because I did think about it, but then also reflected on I can accomplish anything I set my mind to do. So I got myself set up with my AI. I created 9 different videos over the course of
Mm.
2 days. Teach me machine learning like I'm a fifth grader. And I put all the 20 different points into the AI. And then I started consuming these 9 videos and actually learned it. And then I sat on the panel between Boeing and Lockheed Martin, and then another panel that had United Laboratories and so forth. And I learned it. So some people might say, oh, well, AI is cheating. I said, no, but if you learn it, it becomes a part of who you are. And, you know, we're only limited by how creative we are.
Was that some of the things that you talk to the kids about? What are some of those
So
easy concepts for them
I've been
to
talking
get?
to youth for years. I used to do
Okay.
this career days as a pilot. I would actually land the aircraft at different schools.
Okay.
And one day I actually had the opportunity when I was in Atlantic City, had the opportunity to fly the aircraft down to Clinton, Maryland, and I landed at my high school. Yeah, that was pretty cool. And then I got to, land the aircraft at Andrews Air Force Base where I grew up seeing air shows. And then
Mm-hmm.
to be landing the aircraft on those very same runways that I had the jets would fly up and down. It was just a cool moment for me. It is important for our youth to see what is possible. I never forget. It might have been like 1997, 1996. And I landed at an elementary school. We landed in the field, and then all the kids started rushing out. And I'd gotten out of the aircraft, and a little young black kid had came up to me and said, "I want to meet the pilot. I want to meet the pilot." And I said, "I am the pilot." It says, no, you can't be the pilot. I said, no, I am the pilot. And then I had two flight mechanics with me who had come out of the back of the aircraft. They were two white flight mechanics. The kid asked them, that they said, wanted to meet the pilot. And I think I said, no, you can ask them who the pilot is. So then they said, no, uh, Lieutenant Makell, lieutenant at the time, is the pilot. And so he said, but he can't be the pilot because he's black. So that stuck with me for years because I remembered how I felt in flight school, where it was hard for me to perceive myself as a pilot because I hadn't seen, I'd seen one. But that's a significant barrier to get through because if you can't see it for yourself, then taking the actions to actually manifest it become almost impossible. If that is the barrier, then it makes it super important for us to make sure that our youth are able to see us doing different things.
Yes.
You have to see it first in most cases. And if you can't, that's your first barrier of entry, getting a person to see. And that's why I think, and I didn't get a chance to go to HBCUs, but every member of my family, I've got my wife and three kids, and all of them went to HBCUs. And I know, you know, my struggles going to a PWI, the self esteem that can be robbed
Yeah.
from you. So in an HBCU, you get to see black instructors. You can't say, oh, they can do it, but you can't. But if you're in HBCU and you see instructors in all these different disciplines and that they're doctors and so forth and professors, it wipes away that excuse.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I do appreciate you being here, but I'm going to task you with the same opportunity that I have all of my guests. And you pretty much have taught us the importance of leadership and seeing and having goals and actually executing those goals. But as I ask all of my guests, this is a platform of inspiring people to believe in their infinite possibilities. So on the outro, I will ask you, what are your words of wisdom that you would like to share with the audience to help them believe in their infinite possibilities?
Yes. Thank you for that question. And I would say what I've learned the most. One, we can do anything that we set our minds out to achieve. We can, but we have to feel it. And as a coach told me one day, there is a difference between hoping energy and having energy. When we hope for something, that means we don't have it. But when we have it, it's a foregone conclusion. There's a whole different feeling that comes. So when you're visualizing as if it's already happened. And when we're grateful for something, we've already got it. So being grateful for the thing that we're praying for puts you in that mindset of already having it, and that lessens the barrier. The
Mm.
other thing I would say is that we have to do everything possible to make sure that our self image is equal to or exceeds the vision that we have for ourselves. So, what I mean by that, when I was having a hard time seeing myself as a pilot, I had the goal, I had the vision of becoming a pilot, but my self image had not caught up. My identity had not caught up. So if we are carrying around an identity that is suboptimal for where we're trying to go, the first thing we have to work on is creating the identity. I work with people that get promoted, and if you've gone through through promotions and also have gone through several different titles, you're in the workplace. and you move to a different title. So when we take on a new job, we have the title, but we don't yet feel like we have arrived or we get the promotion. So we're in the job and we're like, oh, can I do this? Oh, I'm not sure about this. We start second guessing ourselves. Some people may go through the imposter syndrome. All that is that you've assumed the position, but the identity may lag by 3, 6, 9 months
Mm,
before you really feel like, yeah, this is, I'm
definitely.
it. I got this. In the beginning, you're just like, oh, I hope I can do it. Oh, I may have fooled them. That I don't know if this is if I can do it. It's all these thoughts. It's just fear. And I tell people, you got the job because somebody saw the potential in you to do it. You've got to believe in that. And you also have to give yourself time for your identity to catch up, but realize that's what's happening. And it'll calm the nerves a bit.
Yeah.
Because now you say, okay, I can expect to feel that way, but my feelings don't necessarily equal fact. We can feel a thing, but it may be totally incorrect. And I'll just say this one last thing. In the aircraft, when we're learning how to fly instruments, when you're flying in the clouds, they have this thing of telling you, trust your instruments
Okay.
because you can get what's called vertigo if you're flying at night and there's no reference. You went out to sea, you left land and lights and city lights behind you, and you're out at sea. It's pitch black, cloudy, no stars, no moon, just nothing. It's just black. It can be disorienting. So they say to trust your instruments, and that will keep you flying straight and level. So the feeling you could have is that you are in a nosedive and you're not. You could be straight and level. And then when you try to correct for the feeling, now you put yourself into a position to harm yourself, crash, just like Kennedy did years ago.
Mm,
Flying a private plane, got in the clouds, got the vertigo, crashed. If you go with your feelings, because of the fluid in the inner ear can start turning in a different direction, and you can't trust what you feel. So when we get into these positions, you can't trust your feelings sometimes. When the feeling of imposter syndrome comes over you, trust your instruments. Trust that you're there because you're qualified, even though you might feel like you're not.
yeah.
You were put there for a reason,
Mm.
but feelings don't always equal fact.
I love to get out your feelings.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Say, get out your feelings. I appreciate you being here and sharing your wisdom here on the Girl Get Up podcast. You hang on. I'm going to let you go the right way, but everyone else, we will see you next episode. Take care, everyone.